with the hybridization, one thing they do is they might go to a series of 8 or 10 different hybridize, and they make the seeds smaller and smaller and smaller. That's why with those watermelons, you see that's the smaller size. The seeds are little and white, and they're not black or large seeds because they keep crossbreeding them until the seeds get so small that they're basically not there. Then you can eat them without the seeds. The thing with the genetic engineering is when they really change the structure that you get a different color or you get a different texture, or whether it's really not the same at all. But again, hybridization I think can make it harder to digest or either replicate the same fruit you had before, because once you hybridize it, it can never go back. It's always going to move forward. It can be something else. So I think in the long run, Dr. Pam is right that heirloom is a way to stay if you really want to have the healthiest fruit. And one thing I want to tell the audience too, when you go to the grocery store, we rarely see 8s. And when if you look at your produce numbers, because states like Texas and many states, they're not required to even put the labeling on there. They passed a law years ago that said we don't have to put the label on. We can the format was put out there, but it's up to the states, it's up to even food producers to determine whether they want to put the 8s on there. And so a lot of times you won't even see it.
Yeah, to the point you raise, a lot of people like to eat fish. They think it's the universal healthy food, but they've been genetically modifying fish, particularly salmon, for some time now, and it's actually been mixed in with the regular salmon. And to your point, they haven't been required to label. So you buy the salmon, you don't know if you've got the real thing or Memorex, and so.
Right.
It's all genetically modified. A lot of it is, and it's genetically engineered. It's mixed in with the regular stuff, and so you don't know what you're getting.
So we're talking about genetic engineering and GMOs. We cannot leave out glyphosate, and glyphosate is the chemical that's in Roundup, and it is very prevalent herbicide. And I was once asked to appear on one of the morning shows, and because a study came out saying that the Environmental Working Group did a review on oat cereal and found that they had some alarming levels of glyphosate, and any level is alarming. But this is in why is Roundup in our cereal, in oat cereal of all brands, even even the Quaker Oats and some of the brands that you see on the screen that we give to children. And we find out that glyphosate has been used in the agricultural industry for a while, and it's a well-kept secret, but it came to the marketplace in 1974 as an herbicide, but there was no data collected and provided since until 1990. And Monsanto, it's been a big money maker coming out with the Roundup, which is the weed killer, and many people may know it, use it in their driveway or on cracks or around the house, etc. But it is used in the industry as well on food that we eat. And there has been a dramatic increase of genetically modified food because of glyphosate, because when the food is, when we use herbicides growing in agriculture, they said, let's produce a product or food that's resistant to the herbicide. So the weeds will be killed, but the food will not be killed if we spray it with Roundup. So that's what happened. And but we find there are concerns with Roundup that being disruptive to animals and to humans, and affecting perhaps the detoxification process. They find that that we can become more vulnerable to numerous chemicals because when we're exposed to glyphosate and by consuming it or some residues in our food or in our environment, that can prevent us from detoxifying chemicals as well, our natural detoxification process, and can be an endocrine disruptor as well. So that is a concern. And so with glyphosates, it's used in the industry as a desiccant that, for foods that need to be dried, it will it is openly used there. It's a well-kept secret. Recently, wheat was added to the list in 2021, barley, some nuts like almond, rice, seeds, dried beans, pecans, nuts. I mentioned almonds, sugar cane, beets. I mentioned sweet potatoes. And this is a concern, and it is approved. It is the number one herbicide used in the world, and the United States is the number one utilizer of glyphosate. It was, like I said, it was developed by Monsanto, but Monsanto is now called Bayer, as in our Bayer aspirin, Bayer.
Yeah.
That they own the Roundup and that herbicide. But it's been approved in agriculture, industry, forestry, etc. And so they've been busy creating foods that are resistant to the glyphosate. So it's been used diffusely. And as far as finding it in our environment, we find it in soil, we find it in groundwater, we find it in seawater and air, and stems and leaves of GMO foods like soy. This AMPA is the amino methyl phosphonic acid, but it's a primary degradation product of the glyphosate. So many times when scientists are looking to see if certain foods, if they take it to lab, have it in it, they look for this breakdown product. And so it's pretty prevalent, and so it's a false claim that it's reducing pesticide loads. The pesticide is in the same family as herbicides. And we have seen that since the introduction of genetically engineered seeds in 1996, the amount of glyphosate use has gone up. It was 27 million pounds a year in 1996, and this is in the United States. And the last number I saw was 287 million pounds in 2016. I haven't seen any numbers since then. So I'm sure it's alarming.
Fascinating. Unfortunate. There was a couple of questions that came up. I'm going to address this one real quick regarding wild-caught salmon. We have to be careful with this labeling. So in our class that we teach, a healthy lifestyle series, we bring on some experts on video form, and the industry, they have a way of labeling. So what's considered wild caught is not what's truly been living in the wild, grew up in the wild. They can get farm raised fish, salmon, and what they have to do is just let it swim from one part of a lake to another and catch it a certain number of feet, and they can consider it wild caught. So it was raised in a farm, genetically engineered, but then it can meet the criteria of wild caught. So the fact that it's labeled wild caught does not mean that it's not undergo farm raising or genetic modification or anything. It's just that they meet a certain criteria that allow them to use a certain label. And when you look at that label, it says I'm eating wild caught salmon. Even if it is truly wild caught, it's not optimal for your health, but that's another story. It doesn't mean that it has not been exposed to poison through farm raised environment or genetic engineering. It's just that they meet some arbitrary criteria that say it's wild. It's sort of like saying this is healthy. what's the criteria for being healthy? Well, if it looks pink, it's healthy. Okay, that's the criteria, so I can put healthy on it. So, these labels are arbitrary. And you have the Food and Drug Administration, and somebody asks, well, how can they get away with this? Well, when you're in a certain powerful position as an establishment and there's no true oversight, then you can get away with it because you write the rules and there's nobody that oversees you. The administrators overrule the scientists. And oh, by the way, much of their budget is supported by either the drug industry or the food industry or these guys. And so if you're in partnership with the people that you're trying to regulate, it's very easy that you can get away with this. And these, by the way, are the people paying off the scientists. I mean, not the scientists, but the administrator, the Congress, legislators, who are supposed to be providing, legal oversight by means of laws and regulations. But they're compromised as well. And so, that's how they can get away with it because it's, the fox is guarding the hen house.
Exactly. So, so I guess Benbrook in 2012 showed that there was 527 million pounds of herbicides being used. So this is not just glyphosate, but herbicides being used, but quite a bit. And so we think there's more resistance now to the spread of glyphosate. There's more resistant weeds being developed, so more herbicides are being applied and developed. And genetic engineering it's been a boom with genetic engineering, especially in things like corn and soybeans. And as far as glyphosates, that, as I said, it's the highest rate or use in the United States, although other developed countries and perhaps some non-developed countries use glyphosates. And in July 2013, the EPA raised the allowable level for glyphosate in our food. So, so they who's looking out for us?
Now, was that because of clinical findings of a glyphosate deficiency in our diet? Is that what the reasoning for that was?
I don't think so, but it's I think it's just a great money maker, and some are making money, but we have to be mindful of our health. And
Melody Reed points out the CEO of Pfizer was just head of FDA. I don't know that for a fact, but what I do know, and I'm not questioning her, I suspect she's correct. But what I do know, and Dr. Campbell talks about this, is that you have the heads of regulations. There's an interchange between the industry, and so oftentimes, you're head of the FDA for a certain period of time, and you write some or support some favorable regulation, the policies that feed into this industry. And the next thing you know, you're retired here and you go and getting paid here. And so that's been reported frequently, and that's in part how they get away with it.
Well, one thing I want to add to that is that there have been 5 CEOs of Monsanto who have been head of the FDA. So, like you say, it goes back and forth. You end up as the head of the FDA, and then the chemical industry will hire you, and that's pharmaceuticals and food industry. And then once a new president comes in, he'll appoint a head of the FDA. And a lot of times it's CEOs from the large corporations because they assume they know better, or it's like you said, it's all politics and economics.
Yeah. And the tragedy in all this stuff is that these guys, they don't let physicians take a pen from a drug rep. Not that that's something I'm up in arms about, but the level of stupidity where you're going to fine tune the regulations over here to where, okay, you can't take a pen from a drug rep, but yet these heads of regulatory, we're making the laws. We're not making any laws. We're writing prescriptions, which, that could be problems there, I understand. But you've got these guys who are controlling the system and go back and forth and be controlled by industry. And you know, I think part of our mission here is to inform you first and foremost about the things you need to do to improve your overall health and well-being, the knowledge we share with you. So that's level one. But the other level is to inform you so that hopefully you can educate your broader community of this, because you know, as a community, all of these things have to be a grassroots approach, and you know, we can't let these industries and FDA get away with it. Um, uh, Dr. Atkins mentioned some lawsuits from Monsanto, and they've gotten hit hard with the glyphosate issues and the like. Now, of course, they have the budget for it, but you know, there have been some lawsuits being taken, and people have won in court. Hopefully, that's one approach to, at the very least, not only do they have the lawsuit and the fines, but you know, these things become a matter of public information when it goes to the court. And I'm just hoping that there are enough people, critical enough mass of people who are awake and alert, and who are willing to do something. Doing something as simple as not buying these foods and shopping at your farmers market and local growers, and then maybe forming, you know, political reaction groups that you know, take to the streets or get petitions and you know, raise, you know, noise to our, you know, elected officials that you know, something needs to be done. So it starts here with being informed, and then we take action at different levels.
Okay, so for glyphosate in diseases, I mean, what does it do to the body? And these are some of the references that we found that it can, the glyphosate does affect the cytochrome P450 system pathways. And as docs, we know that that affects the metabolism and liver metabolism and breakdown of different drugs and chemicals. And so that can't be impaired with the glyphosates and we are exposed to it. So that is not good. And the glyphosate enhances damaging effects to these chemicals as a result. And we know that there can be more inflammation in the body, the inflammation that damages cellular systems. It can impair sulfate transport mechanism, and sulfate is very important, and glutathione and other forms in the body. The Western diet, they think the traditional Western diet where we're just eating indiscriminately can contribute to that. We think glyphosates can contribute to gastrointestinal disorders and obesity, diabetes, heart disease, depression, autism, infertility, cancer, and even Alzheimer's, to name a few, can contribute to it. We can't say many of these disorders are multifactorial, but this is a very a factor that we need to consider. What are we putting in our bodies? Other references about diseases associated or conditions associated with glyphosate. There are some studies with animals and concerns about our knowledge of kidney and liver disorders with animals ingesting feed that has genetically engineered feed in it. There's also cons- concerned about killing our microbiome. We talk about the good bacteria or the probiotics in our digestive tract that keeps our immune system strong. Well, these can be knocked out with things like glyphosates. And so that's a concern. There is a study that looked at horses and cows, and when they're fed the feed with this type of glyphosates in it, that it can develop some highly pathogenic bacteria that can become a problem. And so that is a concern. And so, I mean, we don't eat horses, we do, some people eat cows and other things, but we eat, we're eating the food, or if we're indirectly eating the animals that eat the food, it can affect us. So again, They talked about corn and soy causing stomach inflammation in pigs. So if the pig's stomach is inflamed and we eat the pig, what are we doing to our body? So a little bit, and the last slide on this diseases, birth defects have been reported, reproductive effects, invertebrates, also evidence of endocrine disruptors, disrupting the endocrine system, where it can overstimulate breast, uterus, ovary, prostate, etc. Toxic effects to the liver, damage to the DNA. We're damaging our DNA. What is it doing to our future children and increasing for adults, increasing the risk for cancer diagnosis. So this is real. And so these are some of the references for the scientific people. Also, they showed causes multiplication or increase of estrogen sensitive human breast cancer cells. So, also that's in the hormone disruptor category. So, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but we just want to be aware some of the foods that are most commonly genetically modified. And I just encourage everyone to Google a list of genetically modified foods and try to get it as current as possible. These are a few common ones, but there's so many added on that are not on here. So we talked about corn and soy. Cotton, cotton is really made with the pesticides and can be affected by, the herbicides and things like that. But cotton is really not made to eat, but they put cottonseed oil in foods, because it's a very inexpensive oil, but usually it has, chemicals in it, as well as herbicides and things like that. Papaya was a surprising one to me. We talked about rice, the canola oil. Many healthy foods may have canola oil in it, and I would say if the canola oil is not organic, I would not eat the food that has canola oil in it because it can have these residues in it. Potatoes. You think of potatoes as being benign, but they're not so benign. And tomatoes, dairy products, we already talked about. And it's not just milk, but you get the cheese and yogurt and cream sauces and peas. And so, so look at, there are some more extensive lists, but, I just encourage everyone it's encouraging us to eat organic or grown or local farmer, local gardens that grow without pesticides, read labels, and just to be more conscious. So these days it's not being picky. If you want to stay healthy, you got to know what's going on with your body. So this is from George Washington Carver. It says, the freedom of speech is paganly taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to a slaughter.
Well put. Excellent presentation. It's very sobering information because, we rely on our government industry to provide protection. Not only do we rely on them, we pay them, to provide protection, safety in our food sources and the like. But not only are they not providing the safety, but they are in bed with or business with, if you will, private industry to serve the special interests of private industry at the health expense of the general public. And so it's very, very unfortunate, very tragic. Like I always say to Dr. Palmer, it gives us something to do, I guess. Maybe that's the bright side of it. I'm not sure if there's a bright side to it. But we have to first be aware of these things, and we have to be aware and take action first and foremost in our own lives by not eating these foods, not purchasing these foods, by supporting local growers who are not using these methodologies. That at a very simple level, we can each and all start to do work at that level. But I don't think we need to stop there. I think we need to maybe organize within our communities. Obviously, you can share this information. And by the way, if you find this information to be beneficial, hit the thumbs up button to save it on the YouTube algorithm. And also, by all means, share this video. This is a very important topic, and lots of people need to know this. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. You'll get more enlightening information. But the point is that we have to take action. It's one thing to sit around and talk and complain and talk about the conspiracy theories and there's a lot of talk about the current pandemic and all of the things going on, but we have to take action, and the action starts with the behavior and the personal life in terms of health practices, and then it goes beyond there. Share information like this with loved ones, family, and friends, and then start to take action in your community. You can do something as simple as starting a group. You can do it on social media and say, okay, we're going to support our local growers. We're going to get 10, 20 people, 100, 200, 500 people. And, we're not going to go to the supermarket until they stop serving GMO foods. Maybe you can do that type of thing. So there's a lot that we can do. We just have to have the mindset that the power lies within us, both at an individual level and in small groups and in bigger groups. Let's not just sit back and say, well, it's the powerful FDA and powerful Monsanto. No, we can take action at small levels, and we can communicate these actions to other people. And then you reach what's called a tipping point. And so the more people start to take action, you get a critical mass of people, and then it has an exponential growth in terms of behavior. So that tipping point of supporting local growers, a tipping point of boycotting supermarkets that have GMO foods, and one thing should lead to the other. But it starts with information, and that's what we try to provide here. We hope this has been informative to you. We thank you for all your comments in the chat and all the insight. And we want to continue to push this movement. I'm going to turn the stage over to my colleagues. Dr. Palmer, any comments?
Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that we have to, especially for the children, we really don't have a choice anymore. I feel like we've gotten to a point where we really don't have a choice. We have to start taking charge and taking some responsibility and teaching the children a difference, because what is happening, a lot of children are only wanting to eat processed foods and, the chips and things like this. And all of that is basically GMO. And so then they have a lot of stomach ache, they have a lot of, immune system issues. And so now you're piling on more health issues on a child. So in 10 or 15 years, when they are young adults and adults, we hit a wall as far as what's going to happen to their health and what we will consider healthy in 10 to 15 years from now, if all they've been taking in is genetically modified food, which has not built a healthy foundation for their future.
Now, I've heard you talk about some of the food that the kids are eating. A lot of them are eating just the super processed junk. So, we got to get them on. The genetically modified produce is kind of a step above.
Well, I'm not even right. We're not even talking about produce. We're just talking about junk, because if you think about a child's diet, most of the time in the morning, they're eating cereal. And Dr. Atkins just showed us the cereals are GMO. Then for lunch, they may be eating some noodles, ramen noodles, and we know that that's a whole disaster. And then for dinner, mom may cook some chicken or and something else, but in most cases is very little fruits and vegetables at all anyway. And then in many cases, people are not seeking out necessarily non-GMO organic fruits and vegetables when they have a large family. So I know it's complicated. I know it takes a little bit more time, but that's why we often talk about growing your own and having your neighbor grow something and you all exchange. And then the more people that you do that with, you'll have a full plate. All you need is, to take the time to grow one or two things. But this is the mindset that we have to start thinking and teaching the children now, because it's amazing that we do as good as we do based on what we do to our bodies. But I fear for the children because we have a different foundation than what they do. Because like Dr. Atkins is saying, this kind of started pushing harder. It was going on for years, but they pushed harder in 93, 92, 94, around that time. And so I think we're looking at something different than what we see today as far as health is concerned, in a negative place if we don't start to make some changes.
Yep. That says a lot. And so it is a miracle that we're doing, that we're walking around, functioning at any level with the stuff we are saying. Dr. Ford Atkins, any final words for our audience? I know you're loaded with a lot of information and comments here.
Well, Dr. Palmer really said it all. I mean, I agree with that 100%. If I said anything, I would just be bearing more bad news, because I really have to focus on, I want the audience and everybody to understand that it really comes down to our immunity. That when we talk about GMOs, we talk about food, the biggest key is that immunosuppression. And with what's going on right now with the pandemic, it's not so much the virus, but it's showing the population, it's showing the world population just a health status where we are. That we really have to do something. Like Dr. Palmer says, it's amazing that we're doing as well as we are. We see that, but for a person that's 30 and older, you're at risk right now, just based on diet and nutrition, just based on what you're eating, whether it's plant-based or whether it's genetically modified or processed or however. So we have to make some changes. This is a wake-up call to make changes, not just for what's going on right now, but everything in the future from this point forward. For the next 10 years, you have to be proactive and you have to be critical about what you pick up with your hands and put into your body.
Amazing. Dr. Pam Atkins, last words of the day. We'll close it out. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm just grateful and thankful for your audience, and we just learn just to live by intention and just to make healthy choices and know what you put in your body. But yes, we need to back away from the food we know is not healthy, and so if there's less demand for it, perhaps we will have better options. But we have to be aware. And even restaurants, we need to be aware what restaurants have more organic foods and things like that, because and we don't always look for that at a restaurant, but we need to ask about more cleaner restaurants that provide more cleaner food.
Excellent point. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Pam Atkins. Thanks, Dr. Celeste Palmer. Thanks, Dr. Ford Atkins. I'll see you guys backstage. I'll close out. And thank you, audience, for joining us tonight. And again, please subscribe if you haven't. Press the thumbs up button, share some love with likes or loves, and share the information. I think this is a very important presentation. Not a lot of talk is done on GMO foods, and it's one of those things that get hidden below the surface. But I like Dr. Pam Atkins' last comment in terms of living intentionally, and we have to be very intentional about what we do, what we consume, and where we get our foods. I mean, too often, we will just get something and put it in our mouths. We're just going to pick up something from the store and put it in our mouths. And we live in a nutritional landmine. There's a lot of talk about food deserts, but I think we're all in a food desert. When you think about it, you may go to your store and there's a lot of pretty produce, but if 90% of it's genetically modified, then you may be as bad off as a person going to the fast food store getting genetically modified junk food. Maybe there's some benefit, but we don't know. There's not much science behind this. So we should all consider ourselves living in some form of a food desert, and we need to be intentional. We need to, investigate. If you go to a restaurant, do they have genetically modified foods or not? So the whole concept of being intentional about how we live, I think, is an important one. And as we try to inform you, empower you through information to improve your own health first and foremost, and then spread the wealth of information to your friends and loved ones. But we hope this has been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And until next time, I want to keep it fresh, natural, and live. Have a good day.